What My Bones Know, a Memoir of Healing from Complex Trauma by Stephanie Foo. Picture this. A 16-year-old girl stands over her sleeping father, gripping an axe. Her hands tremble with the weight of it. Her mind swirls with terror and fury, and suddenly, she's screaming. How does a child end up in such a heartbreaking moment? What could possibly push someone to this edge? Here's the thing. This isn't fiction. This is a real moment from Stephanie Foo's life, a woman who, on the surface, had everything figured out. She was producing segments for one of the world's most beloved radio shows, living in New York City with a partner who adored her. From the outside, she was thriving. But beneath that polished exterior, a different story entirely. For as long as she could remember, she'd been haunted by what she called the dread. This crushing, constant anxiety, and a bone-deep certainty that she was somehow fundamentally broken. After years of therapy that never quite hit the mark, everything shifted with 3 words. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Not the PTSD we typically hear about, tied to a single horrific event. This was something deeper, something woven into her very being through years of childhood abuse and neglect. In her raw and beautiful memoir, What My Bones Know, Stephanie takes us on an extraordinary journey. She unravels her painful past, explores the science of how trauma literally reshapes our brains and bodies, and embarks on a determined quest for healing. Today, we're walking that path alongside her, and here's what I can promise you. By the end, you won't just understand complex trauma better, you'll discover something profound about human resilience. You'll learn that healing isn't about erasing our scars. It's about finding the strength, and yes, even the beauty, within them. This isn't just Stephanie's story. It's a story for anyone who's ever fought a battle no one else could see. The story begins. Let's start in an unlikely place. The sleek offices of a New York media company. Stephanie Foo is at the absolute peak of her career. She's producing for This American Life, a show she'd dreamed about working for since her teens. She's got friends, a loving boyfriend named Joey, parties, professional recognition, the whole package. By any standard, she's made it. But here's what nobody sees. Almost every morning, she sits at her desk and cries. The dread overwhelms her. This shapeless, relentless anxiety that something terrible is about to happen, and it'll all be her fault. It's been her shadow forever, poisoning her relationships, making her clingy and insecure, driving her to work herself to the bone because achievement is the only thing that briefly silences the voice telling her she's not enough. For 8 years, she's been talking to her therapist, Samantha, trying to manage what she thinks are just regular depression and anxiety. But as she hits 30, she notices something. Her friends are settling into peaceful adult lives, while her internal chaos just gets louder. Desperate, she asks if maybe she's bipolar. Samantha actually laughs. Then she asks a question that changes everything. Do you want to know your diagnosis? After nearly a decade together, Stephanie finally hears it. You have complex PTSD from your childhood. Her therapist explains the difference. Regular PTSD often comes from a single traumatic event, a car accident, combat, an assault. Complex PTSD? That comes from prolonged, repeated trauma over years, with no way out. The most common cause is child abuse. When the session ends, Stephanie turns to Google. What she finds reads like someone wrote her biography without asking permission. Every symptom matches her deepest, most private shames. Trouble controlling emotions, trusting the wrong people, crushing self-loathing, struggling to maintain relationships. Everything she thought made her passions, fears, the way she speaks, suddenly feels like symptoms of a disease. She's become, in her own words, a textbook case of mental illness. The diagnosis is both relief and devastation. It explains everything, but it also feels like a prison sentence. She realizes her entire life in New York, her career, her achievements, all of it has been an elaborate escape from a past that's literally written into her body. And that day she understands, running isn't working anymore. She has to turn around and face what she's been fleeing. To do that, she needs to go back to the beginning, fact-checking her childhood. To understand her trauma, Stephanie needs to fact-check her own memories. She digs out 4 old VCR tapes, the last artifacts of her childhood. What she sees is jarring. A happy little girl with a British accent, opening Christmas presents, chasing bubbles with a smiling, carefree mother. She barely recognizes this life. This isn't how it was, she thinks. This isn't the whole truth. Here's the whole truth. Her family came to America from Malaysia chasing the dream. Her father was brilliant, a perfect 1600 on his SATs, full scholarship to a prestigious California university. They landed in a beautiful home in San Jose, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, the immigrant dream realized. But behind those closed doors lived a nightmare. Stephanie's childhood was a masterclass in walking on eggshells. Her mother, charming and beloved in public, became a tyrant at home. She controlled everything about Stephanie's life, down to how she wrote in her journal. That journal breaks your heart. Her mother forced her to write about family outings as a writing exercise. After 6-year-old Stephanie proudly finishes an entry about the Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk, her mother takes a red pen and bleeds corrections all over the page. The grade at the top, C-. The punishment, a sharp crack of a plastic ruler across her open palm. Today, Stephanie has no memory of the boardwalk itself. Just that ruler. This was her normal. The beatings were constant, for using American slang, for sitting with one leg up, for anything. Her mother used her hands, chopsticks, bamboo canes, tennis rackets, all while screaming that Stephanie had ruined her life, that she was stupid, ugly, unwanted. But as horrifying as the beatings were, the words cut deeper. A few times a year, things escalated beyond violence. Her mother would hold a cleaver to her neck, threaten to throw her down the stairs, trap her in senseless loops of terror for hours. After the worst beatings, she'd threaten suicide, blaming Stephanie for her misery. Stephanie would sit outside that locked bedroom door, ear pressed to the wood, trying to figure out when to call for help, knowing her mother threatened to kill her if she did. Her father, a ghost. The ambitious man who pulled his family from poverty had vanished, replaced by someone who escaped into work and golf. He offered no protection. When his wife exploded, he'd turn to Stephanie, "Why can't you just be better?" To survive, young Stephanie became the family mediator. She absorbed her mother's rage, shielded her father, constructed lies that it was her own bad behavior causing everything. She pushed herself toward perfection, hoping straight A's and flawless performances could somehow fix what was broken in her home. Her only escape was the internet. Late at night, after everyone slept, she'd sneak onto the family computer and connect with friends in chat rooms. It was her lifeline. One night, she discovered her father looking at inappropriate images online. Terrified her mother would find out and destroy their already crumbling family, she secretly changed the parental controls on their AOL account. A few days later, her mother stormed in, screaming that all their money was gone because she couldn't access their online bank. What followed was the worst beating of Stephanie's life. For the first time, both parents turned on her. Her father, who rarely hit her, threw her across the room, against the wall, against a bookshelf, threatening to tip it over and crush her. The beating ended with him grabbing his golf club, the head bigger and harder than his fist, swinging it toward her head as he screamed for the password. She rolled away just in time, the club splintering an ottoman where she'd been lying. That night, she gave them the password, and before bed, she slipped a knife under her pillow. The abandonments. When Stephanie was 13, her mother finally left. She announced she was divorcing her father and drove away. For 2 months, she was gone. When she returned, it wasn't with apologies or hugs, but with rage over a dirty litter box. In that moment, something in Stephanie shut down permanently toward her mother. She chose her father. Her mother's last words to her, "You'll regret this." Life alone with her father brought a new kind of chaos. He was drowning in his own depression, and Stephanie became his caretaker, his parent. She managed his life, his emotions, his social calendar. But their strange shared adolescence was built on a foundation of mutual hatred for her mother. Over dinner, they'd trade stories of her cruelty, calling her vile names. Stephanie learned that hatred was the antidote to sadness. It felt like pure power. That rage spilled into school. She became this tiny, foul-mouthed rebel, getting into fights, alienating classmates, leaning into rumors that she was a witch, a drug dealer, a monster. Soon, the hatred she and her father shared had nowhere to go but toward each other. The first time he said she was just like her mother, she screamed back, "I am nothing like her." The fights escalated. He started using his car as a weapon, speeding through stop signs, swerving into oncoming traffic, laughing maniacally and singing, "It's time for both of us to die." One sunny afternoon, after another terrifying car ride, Stephanie had enough. She jumped out at a red light and walked home. That night, she found an old, rusty axe in the yard. As her father slept, she stood over his bed, heaved the axe above his head, and screamed. "How do you like it?" she said, her voice eerily calm. "How does it feel to be on the other side of things?" She made him promise never to threaten her life again. A few months later, her father left too. At 16, Stephanie was living alone in a large, empty house in the middle of nowhere. Her father would drop by to leave food, but mostly she fended for herself. She subsisted on shoplifted microwave dinners and filled journals with suicide notes. 2 things saved her: her best friends and journalism. Joining the school newspaper gave her purpose. It was a puzzle she could solve. A way to take the chaos and injustice of the world and shape it into something controlled, something meaningful. Journalism got her into college despite a terrible GPA. It got her to high school graduation, an event her father didn't attend. As she stood there, diploma in hand, she realized she'd survived. She'd gotten herself there through sheer will. Building a new life. That drive became her salvation. She threw herself into her career, graduating college in just 2.5 years. She was brilliant, but she was also angry. She saw herself as a sword, swinging blindly. She pushed people away. Most painfully, a close friend, diagnosed with cancer. Lost in her own pain, Stephanie failed to show up. She was later told, "The real cancer is pictured sitting next to me." The abandonments piled up, and she realized the common denominator was her. At 22, she made a conscious decision to change. She embarked on an act of radical forgiveness, letting go of the anger that had been her armor. She started seeing Samantha, and slowly, painstakingly learned the basics of healthy communication. She pushed down her anger like dough, flattening it until floating away from conflict became reflexive. And it worked. She built a community of loving friends. She landed a job at Snap Judgment, then her dream position at This American Life. By every external measure, she was the picture of resilience. The world loves a happy ending, and she'd written one for herself. She was all better now. Or so she thought. The diagnosis and the deep work. This brings us back to where we started. Despite her success, the dread never left. It was a constant hum beneath everything, swelling during stress or self-doubt. It sabotaged relationships and fueled workaholism. The move to New York and the pressure at This American Life made it worse. A difficult boss seemed to single her out, undermining her confidence, leaving her feeling incompetent and isolated. After years of this, her carefully built world began crumbling. Her anxiety reached a breaking point. She cried on the subway every day. Work, once her salvation, felt like a prison. One day, after her boss berated her over a tiny mistake, the tsunami of rage she'd suppressed for years finally broke through. She quit. Though she returned later, the illusion shattered. Work wasn't the cure. Days later, on that call with Samantha, she got her diagnosis. And with it, a terrifying question. If her entire personality was just symptoms, what part of her was actually her? This is where Stephanie's real journey begins. She quits her dream job, telling her boss, "Healing needs to be my job now." Like the journalist she is, she starts with research. She learns that complex PTSD doesn't officially exist in the DSM, the diagnostic manual, which is why so few therapists know how to treat it. The literature she finds is grim, describing people with C-PTSD as a burden to themselves and others. This sends her spiraling with shame, but her research also reveals something crucial: the profound biological impact of her childhood. She discovers the ACE score, Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a questionnaire measuring childhood trauma, and the results are stark. More trauma equals worse health outcomes in adulthood. High ACE scores correlate with cancer, heart disease, depression. A score of 6 or higher can take 20 years off your life. Stephanie's score is a 6. She learns trauma literally changes the brain. In traumatized brains, the amygdala, the fear center, is enlarged. Other parts, responsible for self-awareness, emotional regulation, logical reasoning, are shrunken. Her trauma isn't just memory. It's physical reality, carved into her brain and DNA. She learns about epigenetics, how trauma can change chemical markers on our genes, and pass that trauma through generations. Her family tried erasing their history of war, poverty, and migration, but her body remembered. This knowledge is terrifying, but also, strangely, liberating. It's not all in her head. Her pain is real, quantifiable, scientific, but it also feels like a prison. If her brain is programmed by trauma, can she ever change? The tools of healing. This becomes her central question. She starts by trying to hack her brain. She adopts strict routines: healthy eating, exercise, 8 hours of sleep. It helps her physical energy, but the psychic pain remains. She knows she needs a therapist, but the search is a nightmare of bureaucracy and bad matches. She finally tries EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing. It's this strange therapy where you revisit past traumas while moving your eyes back and forth, or holding vibrating buzzers. Her therapist, Eleanor, asks her to recall a disturbing memory. But when Stephanie thinks about the most violent moments, the golf club, the knives, she feels almost nothing, maybe a 2 out of 10. She realizes she's profoundly dissociated from her own pain. To break through, she decides to re-trigger herself. She downloads Mommy Dearest, a film whose depiction of child abuse mirrored her own so closely it had terrified her as a teenager. In her next EMDR session, buzzers in hand, she revisits the memory of being beaten with a wire hanger. This time, the memory explodes with vividness. She hears her mother screaming, sees the red welts forming on her child self's legs. For the first time, she doesn't just know the abuse wasn't her fault. She feels it, like a blade cutting through fog. She's overwhelmed with love and adoration for her childhood self, for that courageous little girl who endured so much. And she unearths a second truth that shatters her. Her parents didn't love her. Not because she was unlovable, but because they were so buried in their own misery, they were incapable of it. It's tragic, but instead of breaking her, it sets her free. But healing isn't a straight line. Just as she starts feeling better, she'll spiral back. After a weekend where she feels slightly left out by her best friend and fiancé, she plunges into familiar rage and self-loathing. It takes hours to figure out why she's upset. Her dissociation is like a veil hiding her true emotions. The dread is just a colorless blend of feelings she doesn't have tools to name. So she begins learning to feel. She tries everything: acupuncture, breathwork, trauma support groups, but she catches herself approaching wellness with the same obsessive perfectionism she brought to work, stressing about not being perfect at relaxation. She finds a breakthrough in an unexpected place, a candlelit yin yoga class. The instructor's constant guidance forces her to focus intensely on physical sensations. For the first time, her racing mind goes quiet. She learns about the default mode network, the part of our brain active when we ruminate about the past or worry about the future. For people with C-PTSD, this network is overactive. Mindfulness, focusing on the present, is the most effective way to quiet it. She discovers she can short-circuit anxiety by counting colors in the room or mindfully eating a chicken wrap. She even revisits psychedelics. A psilocybin mushroom trip in Brooklyn Botanic Garden helps her break through her self-hatred. For years, friends had offered love and compliments, but they fell into a black hole. Under the influence, she finally allows herself to absorb their kindness, to believe she's worthy. This inspires her to start a gratitude journal, something she'd once scoffed at. By systematically noting good things, she slowly retrains her brain. But these are tools for managing symptoms, not curing the source. To truly heal, she needs to go deeper. Before moving forward, she has to go back one more time, to San Jose, returning to the source. The trip shocks her. The rolling hills she remembered as bland and sleepy are actually gorgeous, craggy mountains full of life. She realizes with devastating clarity that her trauma had blinded her to the beauty of her own home. She'd thrown out all good memories with the bad. This throws her into crisis. If she could misremember something so fundamental, can she trust any of her memories? Was the communal trauma she remembered among immigrant classmates real, or had she projected her experience onto everyone? Her old high school teachers say the students' main problem is academic stress. They paint a picture of a privileged, high-achieving community. For a moment, she believes them. Maybe she was making mountains out of molehills. But a conversation with an old classmate, Steve, shatters that illusion. "Of course the teachers don't know," he says. "Yes, we were all getting our asses beat." Final confirmation comes from the school social worker Yvonne, who tells her that physical abuse, sexual assault, incest, and self-harm are rampant among students. The model minority myth makes this trauma invisible. The community isn't a paragon of immigrant success. It's a community of survivors, passing down unhealed wounds generation after generation. This validation is crucial. Stephanie isn't crazy. Her pain is real and shared. This leads her to explore the silence in her family. Her great aunt, the family matriarch, finally reveals a long-held secret. The reason Stephanie was treated as the favorite during their visits to Malaysia wasn't because she was special. It was because the entire family knew about the abuse. Everybody also seen, Auntie tells her. They showered her with love and praise not because she earned it, but as protection, to counterbalance her mother's cruelty. It was a grand, coordinated performance of love. This revelation is complicated. While it was an act of love, it was also deception, part of a long family history of keeping secrets. Stephanie learns about her mother being adopted, about a half-sister she never knew existed, that her father remarried years before telling her. The past, she realizes, is never really past. The final breakthrough. This brings her to her most transformative therapeutic relationship. After a frustrating search, she finds Dr. Jacob Ham at Mount Sinai, who specializes in relational trauma. Their therapy is unconventional. They record sessions, then analyze transcripts together in a shared Google Doc, like two editors collaborating on a story. Dr. Ham teaches her that C-PTSD is fundamentally relational trauma caused by bad relationships, healed through practicing good ones. His office becomes a safe place for her to duel, to practice listening, asking for what she needs, and repairing the small ruptures in communication that happen between them. He teaches her that punishment doesn't work. Her whole life, she believed shame and self-punishment were the only ways to improve. But watching a recorded session of Dr. Ham with another family, she sees a father reach his estranged daughter not through guilt, but through love and forgiveness. Punishment, she realizes, is the opposite of love. Dr. Ham gives her permission to feel all her emotions, even negative ones. He teaches her the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the appropriate hurt when something bad happens. Suffering is the extra layer of shame you add. Feeling bad about feeling bad. Healing isn't about feeling nothing. It's about feeling appropriate emotions at appropriate times and being able to return to yourself. This permission widens her world. The narrow, treacherous corridor of her mind, walled in by her mother's rules, begins opening up. She allows herself to be sad, tired, to eat the cookie, and the world doesn't collapse. The culmination comes at her wedding to Joey. She'd invited extended family, but not her parents. The day celebrates not just their love, but the community that raised her. The friends who kept her alive. During the ceremony, she and Joey give every single guest a personal, handwritten letter thanking them for being in their lives. As she looks out at the sea of tear-streaked faces, the void of loneliness she's carried her whole life is, for once, full. Overflowing. She realizes the story her PTSD told her, that she was unlovable, toxic, alone, was a lie. The truth is, she's given and received a lifetime of love. The final truth. The book's powerful revelation comes during the 2020 pandemic. As the world melts down, Stephanie finds herself calm, productive, clear-headed. She realizes her PTSD, a condition that felt like a disability in peacetime, has transformed into a superpower in crisis. Her hypervigilance is now just vigilance. Her ability to dissociate in extreme stress allows her to become hyper-rational and focused, while others panic. A neuroscientist she interviews even has an acronym for this: BADASS, Blunted and Discordant Affect Sensitivity Syndrome. She realizes her C-PTSD, with all its challenges, has also given her gifts: profound empathy, attunement to others' needs, unshakable strength. She's not broken. She is, and always has been, a wonder. What this means for us. What My Bones Know is more than a memoir. It's a vital and generous act of translation. Stephanie takes the painful, isolating language of trauma and translates it into a story of hope, resilience, and profound humanity. What strikes me most is its relentless honesty. There are no easy answers. Healing, as Stephanie shows, isn't a destination you arrive at one day. It's a lifelong process, messy and frustrating, filled with setbacks. But it's possible. She demolishes the myth that we're prisoners of our past. Instead, she offers a new narrative, that our past, however painful, can become a source of incredible strength and wisdom. The book argues powerfully against silence. Stephanie's family, like so many others, believed burying the past was protection. But she reveals that secrets don't heal wounds. They let them fester in darkness. By bringing her story into light, she gives us all permission to do the same. Our pain doesn't have to be shameful. It can be a bridge to connection, empathy, and deeper understanding of ourselves and each other. For anyone who's felt that nagging dread, that sense of being fundamentally different or broken, this book is a lifeline. It's scientific investigation, personal reckoning, and love story all in one. It teaches us that our brains and bodies are wired for survival, and even our most challenging symptoms are often just our deepest instincts trying to protect us. The rage, anxiety, hypervigilance, these aren't signs of weakness, but evidence of what we've survived. What you can do today. Here are a few simple ideas you can carry with you. First, practice curiosity over judgment. The next time you feel that familiar sting of self-criticism, get curious instead. Ask yourself, as Dr. Ham taught Stephanie, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Treat your emotions not as enemies to silence, but as wise messengers. Second, remember the power of grounding. When overwhelmed, you don't need complicated meditation. Just bring yourself back to the present. Try counting colors. Find 5 red things in the room, then 5 blue, then 5 green. It's surprisingly powerful for quieting the noise and reminding your body that right here, right now, you're safe. Finally, start looking for evidence of love. The story our anxiety tells is often one of lack and loneliness. But if you look closely, your life, like Stephanie's, is filled with countless small acts of kindness. A text from a friend, a smile from a stranger, a moment of connection. Notice them. Write them down. Gratitude, as Stephanie discovered, is the flame that fills the void. That was a summary of What My Bones Know by Stephanie Foo. We've walked through the major landmarks of her journey today, but honestly, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It shows you the layout, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the paths, breathing the air, feeling the sun on your face. The real magic happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or simple phrase connects with you in unexpected ways. This summary is here to help you see if this is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about has sparked something in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you understand yourself and the world. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It tells us these journeys matter and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing and learning together.